Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Jim Dandy Day Talking Horses, day 13 here at Saratoga. Talking Horses presented by our friends at Saratoga Springwater, Sarah Obadwi and Andy Serling on what is a nice day now. We are thinking about the possibility of some showers later in the day. Midway through the card, we'll briefly touch on off the turf races, but you're ready for a big day because you are at the apogee of your life happiness right now.
This is truly the moment that I've never been quite so excited to get a day started in Saratoga so far, as we're discussing off air prior to the show, but really looking forward to today's card. Lots of exciting stakes action, some very competitive races overall, just like yesterday's racing, extremely competitive races, lots of good prices available, so we'll keep an eye on the weather, but right now, things are looking nice so far.
We'll hope for the best. Can't do anything better. Head on over to NYRA Bets. We've got 12 to talk about today. Head over to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member of NYRA Bets, use the promo code SPA200. We will match up to $200 of your initial deposit. Get with the program. Get with NYRA Bets. We have, boy, I know you're excited. The middle pick 4. I don't even know what race is possibly in today. It actually might, I think the extra pick 5 is in race number, I don't know. What are we doing here? Race 5 for the mandatory pick 5. Could race 6 be the extra pick 4? Yeah, race 6 is the extra pick 4. Race 8, race 2. It's all there. It's all happening. What else? We have the $1 million bonus. If you are playing the late pick 4 through NYRA Bets, you got nothing to lose. If you're the only winner and you play it through NYRA Bets, an extra $1 million. Head over to NYRA Bets. Opt in as always. We have the Taste of New York Pavilion located near Gate A, the Berkshire Bank Family Zone. Thursdays through Sundays, a lot of good stuff going on over there. Check it out. One of the many fun attractions here at Saratoga. We have multiple slates for the shows. So we're on FS2 from 12:30 to 1:30, FS1 from 1:30 to 3, and FS2 from 6 to 7. We are also on Big Fox, 3 to 6, as we will be 6 Saturdays going through the Travers for 3 hours. Big Fox Network today and the next 4 Saturdays as well. Kicking off the action, they're on the turf. Very confident we'll be on the turf for this one. I'm going to start off with a workout for the number 7 Moonlight, who just because it's Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz will probably be favored. This horse worked 21 flat. I didn't think it was a super impressive workout. That horse is a half to 2 turf winners out of 3 to try it. We'll see how the audibles do as a turf sire. And I just figured this horse would be favored just because and went in a slightly different direction, as did you, Sarah.
I agree with that sentiment. This was a workout that was obviously a fast move regardless of the way that it was done, but this horse took a moment to switch leads until the later part of the work. Just a very so-so kind of average workout, and wasn't one that I was entirely wowed by, but of course a fast time is a fast time regardless of how they appear to do it, so certainly one that could win here, but all the accoutrements to take a lot of money, perhaps be a bit overbet in a spot like this, and there isn't a ton of pedigree to go on for this one either.
Well, there's a half to 2 turf winners. You like Frontline Warrior. This horse, I mean, is a war front, but it's not exactly teeming with turf pedigree either.
No, but I will say that the Dam, while she was more successful dirt sprinting, of course having that big win in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, one that I loved quite a lot, she did start out her career sprinting on synthetic and did have some success going longer on that surface. And while I do agree with you that these are 3 separate surfaces, I do believe that synthetic can play a little bit more similar to a turf course than dirt will. So I didn't want to leave this one completely out of the question. Maybe not a first time out debut kind of pedigree or trainer, but one that I would definitely want to keep an eye on going forwards, and there could be some talent there.
Didn't she run once in the turf and get a 54 buyer in that one effort?
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, she tried the turf and didn't handle it. But listen, Shug McGay's trying the turf. We'll see how it works out in there. I went to the number 6 Monica. I'm guessing here the Dam was 1 for 9 in the grass. It's her second foal. It's really kind of dirty as well. But George Weaver's just done so well with firsters, and I'm going to continue to sort of ride that train with George Weaver. I had the 4. Yaqui Valley in there because the horse has some experience and does have a couple of turf winners from the Dam, and they did enter for the turf last time. So the horse is kind of turf meant, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. This was a horse that showed some speed, second best in a 4-horse field, though. I wasn't totally in love with that, but that was on a different surface. So, I mean, this is one that the Dam hasn't had any turf route winners so far, but experience does go a long way in these 2-year-old races. Quickly going back to that number 6 horse that you mentioned for George Weaver Modica, while he does have a lot of success with his 2-year-old first-time starters, especially on the turf, for the routes, he's only 2 for 21, 10%, $1.85 ROI, 2-year-old first-time starters turf routes past 5
he's
years.
had success over the years, though, with turf routers here.
Yeah, sure. Just generally not as much first time out when you think of how hot the barn is.
Yeah, it's a stat that very few have big numbers in general in that situation, so I don't worry. But speaking of George Weaver, he trained the dam, I believe, of the number 1 Corruption, who was a very nice turf runner, and this one goes out for Todd Bletcher. Luis Saez on this one, Irad on the other one, but for me, if I was going to one of them, I'd go to this one with more pedigree.
Yeah, and this one's a half to a horse that did win first time out, although that was dirt sprinting, and the dam certainly has quite a bit of pedigree. I liked this workout a little bit more, worked 10 and a fifth.
This horse a half to a horse that won in the turf?
No, dirt sprinting.
Oh, dirt sprinting. Okay,
Yes,
yeah, so she
yeah.
did, because she
She
was
did
0
right.
for 2 on the turf,
Right,
but there is
right.
significant turf from the dam side.
Yep.
Race number 2. Race number 2, we'll take a look at Bold Journey going back on the dirt back to February, a race I picked him in the Carter over, and I thought I was going to get the winner. He looked like he was going to charge by in the stretch and came up empty. He's had some very soft trips in winning on the turf and running second in subsequent starts, but Bill Mott goes back to the surface. He's run his best race, and if he runs this race, he's going to win today.
I don't disagree with you on that. I think it's a little bit of a concern that this was his 96 Buyer Day in that win on February 10th, and we haven't seen a number quite like that on either surface. Now, his last 2 races on the turf obviously make him a contender. They're not that far off, a kind of figure like that, but this is a number that we haven't seen from him again or prior to that, and I do feel as though he's going to be a short price.
Okay, you have gone to the 7 Floki's Fight. We'll take a look at his race last time at Ellis Park.
He's one that I thought would sit just off of the speed in Scotchatory, and I didn't see a ton of speed in this race. I felt as though that outside post position does benefit him as he does cut back in distance from his mile win last time where he was really barely able to sustain after getting an easy lead. I think the cutback might assist him as he does project to sit just off of a horse that should be forward in here, and I just didn't really see anybody else really wanting to be in that forward kind of position.
He's in raging form. Absolutely a major contender. He does come out of a merry-go-round race at Ellis, and you've talked quite a bit about wanting to bet against speeds at Ellis, and that bothered me a little bit because they ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around the track. I didn't think it was an enormous bias day, but speed did appear to have an edge in there. I didn't love the field he ran with, but I hear you. He obviously makes a lot of sense in here. I like Scacciatore, who I think will be the speed. He's coming out of a super tough race against Rotney, who's just in absolutely raging form, and he really didn't run that badly as the chaser, and inevitably after that fell apart. And I thought he's run some good races since Rudy claimed him. Rudy's having a much better meet than he did last year, and I was kind of hoping he'd wire the field and be a bit of a price in the race. David has the number 5 Osborne favored over Bold Journey. Is that really possible that he's going to be favored? A horse that hasn't run since Oaklawn, or maybe he's just looking at the Irad Ortiz factor. This horse does have some very good races. I thought Bold Journey would be favored, but maybe the Irad Ortiz factor will make a horse who probably shouldn't be favored the favorite.
Well, I think that, of course, that's something that you have to consider and probably what David's line of thinking was. And I think also people might look at a horse like Straight No Chaser that he ran second to last time. Although he was soundly beaten, Straight No Chaser isn't too bad so far, and he's run some big numbers. He ran a 107 that day. So I think just the level of competition he's faced doesn't quite stack up to what he's facing today. But he's another one. He has no speed early either.
Yeah, I also am basically dubious of taking horses from Oaklawn in general, and that makes me a little bit concerned with him. And, boy, I think if they make him favored, and I have him third, you have him fourth, but I feel like that would make other horses value in this race. Let's move on to race number 3. So I want to get horses that are not in the sort of races we've seen horses coming from. Horses like Hatch and Volkert and War Terminator. I'm just not thrilled with them. And Luna Warrior's a horse that I imagine will take some money. David has a 3-1 morning line. I'm guessing favorite at that point. Will show his last race. And listen, he is in good form. Billy's Got Issue ran reasonably well the other day. I don't know. I just think there are much more interesting horses at better prices in here.
Right, and I like you. I don't love taking those horses when they make that step up to face winners for the first time, or they're stepping up in terms of allowance levels for the non-winners of 1 to non-winners of 2, and especially at short prices because it's a different class of horse that he's going to be facing today. And while this was a decent effort, and he is a horse that does come from off the pace in a race where I do see a lot of speed on paper in this 5.5 furlong sprint, I just didn't want to take this one on the chance that this horse goes back to back with the wins after having so many chances to get the first one.
Talk about Carpy's Dream. I agree with everything you said, basically. I mean, yes, I agree with your sentiments there.
I mean, if you go down the page, this horse is just facing a world of better horses. This is the first time in for a tag for Carpe's Dream, and while this horse didn't do a ton of running last time, just such better company. This one was facing Portfolio Company. You go back and you have Big Invasion, Fluid Situation, even Bull Journey and Sasua Summer are 2 back. This is a horse that has just been running at a level where he has not been competitive lately, and this is the first time where he's going to be offered for that for sale sign, and perhaps that could be a difference maker. He's also not one that needs to have the lead in order to do his better running. He's one that's probably going to sit mid-pack.
Well, he's only won 1 race, and that was the day he had the lead. So we're not sure that he can win a race without the lead. I mean, listen, I get the thought process with him. I looked at this horse long and hard. I think he was my 5th pick. He was so bad on June 9th. I think he's flattered by the race and the fact that he was inside and the rail was good and then bad again. I see your logic, and I'm not saying he's an impossible horse. He's a very usable horse in here. But I worry a little bit that he's a horse that needs to be forward to run his best race, and his races are behind him. And it is kind of tough to make him forward in here. Not that it's impossible, but in this race, it's tough to see him forward. I'm going to take Devil's Only Friend on the drop-down situation for George Weaver. This is the first race at Gulfstream, and obviously a strong race for this horse. So then he gets in a race. I don't believe in that erratic throughout. I find the chart calls down at Gulfstream to be a little dubious at times. But last time out, what chance did he have? He was in that wicked pace in the Paradise Creek on this very, very soft course, and they're dropping him too. So I think it's a similar thought process you're using with Carpe's Dream, that he's getting into better spots, and I can make some excuses for him. He ran well first time, and it's George Weaver. I'm gonna use him and sort of ride that train. A horse I'm very interested in. I see you had a little bit of interest in him as well. Is the 4 Starry's Night. Starry Night. I almost put him on top in this race. I was sort of between the 4 and 7. I've been waiting for the right spot for this horse. He got involved with tougher horses last time, that prep on the dirt. And this is a horse that has some go-back races that make him extremely competitive here. And he's got to be a giant price, right?
I mean, maybe there's some sort of semblance of others seeing the kind of similar things that we do, because I think that getting back to a distance like this, and even his race here last year, his first start here, that wasn't so bad, and he's one that did make that jump from having a decent maiden win into facing winners for the first time and did not run disgracefully when doing so. I think these conditions could fit this horse better today. I didn't want to move him up anymore in terms of my lineup, just because I think there's some others that are dropping down.
Now listen,
but he's got a chance.
These races are so chock full of contenders that there are horses you have 3rd and 4th that there's a moment in your life where you just thought a little bit differently and you could have put them on top.
Oh, yeah.
And that's always the tricky thing at Saratoga. If you want to judge people by their top choices, go ahead. You're sort of missing the whole point of discussing horse racing, because these races, you're going to look at prices as the day progresses. Maybe you have a top choice and you thought they'd be similar prices, and the one you put 2nd or 3rd ends up being twice the price, and so you bet that horse, because that's what horse players do. They try to find value among their picks. They don't cement themselves to selections. I thought KBC Later, a horse that you have 3rd and I have 3rd as well, might improve off the layoff for Joe Sharps, or that 2-year-old form, maybe a different horse as a 3-year-old.
Possibly, and this is one that showed some speed, probably not going to be the speed of the speed in a race like this, but certainly could take another step forward. I didn't want to leave this one completely off either.
Race number 4. You got a 2-headed monster from Linda Rice here, and we'll go through them first, and they're going to take a lot of money in this race. And David has the number 3 at 6-1 in this race. Frankly, that's, that seems like an awfully big price. We'll take a look at the race at Belmont. This was a bad field. The horse that won had a trip. The horse who was 3rd should have won the race, fell down at the start. Another Linda Rice horse. But still, she has incredible numbers. Off the claim with maidens on dirt sprints, she's 9 for 20. And overall, off the claim with maidens on the dirt, she is not 17 for 44 with a 205 ROI. I don't want to dismiss her claims with maidens. I don't want to let them beat me.
And especially not with a horse that's shown some speed as well. Of course, that's beneficial in a race like this. And the other horse that was pressing the pace ended up fading in the later stages. So while she wasn't able to see things out for the win, certainly ran the better race of the pace-setting horses. Linda, there's a point that was made yesterday about quick money. When Linda's claiming these horses, sometimes she steps them up. This is one that she's leaving at the same level versus her other horse in here who is taking that slight step up. It's only $10,000. I wouldn't read too much into it. But I think that was just something of note when looking at multiple entrants for her, if that's something you consider at all.
We'll show Party at Grant's last race. And that's the one that's short priced. And I think David feels that with Jose Ortiz riding. But Linda wins a lot of races with Jose Lezcano. Yes and no. I'm 99% sure Maiden 40 is the bottom here. So I don't think she has a choice. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are Maiden 20s that come up. But also, sort of where is she supposed to go? She's not going to run them in Maiden Specials. Probably not going to wait for 75. I would think it's more finding a race
Where's
that
the
came up.
spot?
If somebody wants
Okay.
to claim one of these guys for 40K, she's probably okay with it, or
Right.
these gals, I should say. I think they both can win in here. I was interested in a couple other horses in here. One is the one, Super Slews Cash, whose one dirt race was against significantly better horses. And if you look through the field, that was an extremely live race going forward. They tried turf. They tried synthetic. I kind of like going back to the dirt for Mike Trombetta. I just didn't want to take the horse on top because I hate entries. And while the other one's not impossible, I much prefer this one. So I went the two Best Coast, who was wide chasing the whole way. And I don't know. It felt like looking at the race. This was actually an okay race. He comes out of for Brad Cox. And Brad shipping a maiden claimer here to Saratoga. It's usually a pretty good sign. So I took Best Coast on top.
I think there's a big difference between a horse that's going out for that $100,000 maiden claiming tag versus now dropping to the $40,000 tag. And I see a lot of the things that you did with that race, sitting off the pace and fading eventually. First time out to second time out, certainly capable of improving. I went to the number 4, Keep It Sexy, who's a horse that I just think was doing the wrong thing for the first couple of starts. This is a Munnings baby that they have going long on the turf. And the kind of turf horses that this horse was facing in Maiden Special Weight Company, those are stakes quality turf horses.
Okay. No, LaGuardia's. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. 2 of them, 1 stakes. I'm sorry. You're right.
So now getting to a dirt sprint, dropping in class for the first time, putting the blinkers on, there's a little bit more versatility in the dam side, but the dam actually won a couple times on the dirt, one with a 90 Beyer speed figure. Switching into another barn as well, going to Peter Walder, I just thought there were enough changes for this horse that this would be a better condition for this one and possibly could show some speed as well.
I hear you. And looking at this horse's pedigree, it's extremely puzzling why this horse was running in turf routes. And not only just turf routes, Tom found a 1.3 race. He didn't cut back. He went to a longer race. So, okay, I see the pedigree on this horse, and I understand where you're going with him. The problem is it's a presumption that the trainer was completely out to lunch, essentially. Because to get a horse and be going from miles to the turf and then go 1.3, and another trainer says, I think he's a 6 furlong dirt horse, and that trainer is right, I trust Tom Worley, and I thought about all this stuff.
They
but
won
I
a
just
couple races yesterday. I mean, they know what they're doing.
right. I just feel as though, and I get it. I totally get it with the pedigree. But the problem is, so does Tom. I'm sure Tom is saying right now, yeah, I know this horse looks like he's a better sprinter in his pedigree. But now listen, trainers get horses wrong, and Tom would also admit that.
When we get things wrong too, we all do it. You know,
It's horse racing. Everybody gets a lot more wrong than we get right.
Exactly.
This would be quite a whopper to have gotten wrong, but I hear you. I'm curious. The other thing is, isn't this horse going to be completely out the back door? I mean, how close can he be going to 6 furlongs off those races? But we'll see. I mean, he's certainly a wise guy horse in this race. I get it. Race number 5, I don't know what happened at 3 horses. Theoretically, 2 of them major contenders in here decided to scratch out of the race, but unfortunately we're left with 4. It's still a good field. I put this horse on. I did not. You Look Cold is the only replay we have, and we left the horse out. I had other replays, but they scratched. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not really against anybody in this field. A small field, I won't be surprised. Did we show You Look Cold? Here we go. Anyway, I thought this horse could win. I don't love that Rosebud has tailed off since then, but that was certainly a strong race, and they buried Can't Hurry Love, who came back to win a stake.
Right, two very talented horses bookending this one and has some races to go back to that don't suggest that this was just a completely fluky kind of performance. With the scratches, do you worry a little bit more about the number 4 on the ones and twos having a little bit more of a pace advantage than the others in here?
Oh, sure, of course. I mean, absolutely. The scratches dramatically help with Tizzy in the Sky coming out, and I'm not going to be surprised if she does okay. She has that one big race, and she's sort of erratic. I wonder a little bit with a slower field. I mean, you really think Good Sam is going to let this horse get that far away?
No,
Isn't
no.
Irad going to be hounding this horse
And
as much
isn't-
as he can?
And isn't Good Sam just likely to improve off of that first start back off the layoff as well?
Yeah, Good Sam is a horse that looks slow on paper. And the first inclination is this is far and away the slowest horse in the race. I don't want her. I'm not so sure. Midnight Stroll ran 11 buyer points faster in her subsequent start. That's a race that looked a little bit better than it was. He's coming off a layoff. She ran an 81 in her debut as a 2-year-old, which makes you feel like there's an 88 somewhere out there in the relatively near future. So I actually think she's extremely dangerous. Now, keep in mind, looking at the morning line, you have to just completely dismiss
Everything's
it.
going to
Now,
change.
she is the biggest price with Sterling Silver. I like Sterling Silver in here. Obviously, her job gets tougher because of the scratches. Having said that, she's a horse that was badly compromised by Trip last time. Well, Can't Hurry Love It, this clean outside Trip. Javier just got caught in a spot, not his fault, where he couldn't get her outside to make her clean run, and it just compromised her situation there. I believe she's the best horse in this race if she's able to get her clean Trip. I worry a little about the pace, but now in a 4-horse field, how far behind is she going to be? And I'm
Right.
just going to hope she can produce that kick without getting enough pace.
Certainly a possibility. She's one that I think has clearly faced the best horses so far in her career and not done terribly.
Her race to
against
back
them.
was giant.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, she's a good horse.
I thought she ran very well last time. I thought she was dramatically compromised by Trip. We will break after the 6th race, guys, if that works for you. Race number 6, we're hoping to at least get this one on the turf. I'll mention some quick dirt thoughts after it, after we talk about the race. Let's talk about the race that starts now. Bomb Squad and North End Lady come out. UF starts now on top, so obviously like that one more than I do. I'm looking for new faces, though, to ignore the rider change on starts now, but the public's not going to ignore it either. That's the problem.
No, I changed my selections for this race maybe 3 or 4 different times. This is the race that I spent the most time on the card, but I ultimately just kept coming back to this horse because I did truly feel that this was probably the best horse that we've seen so far in terms of what they've done. And I think that the rider change, okay, sure, it's Irad Ortiz Jr., and that's going to automatically catch the public's eye and take more money. But this is a horse that was taken really far back and kind of that death by 1,000 checks, just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Really? It's so unusual for that rider.
I wasn't going to mention
He
anything
has
specific.
patented that
but
move, I think.
It's not something you like to see, especially in turf racing. You want to make that one.
I agree. There was a runoff leader in the race. I agree with you, but there was a runoff leader, which I think affected a little bit.
That's a fair point. This is a horse that just has been getting into spots that weren't necessary in terms of traffic or waiting behind other horses. I think that will be different today.
No, I get it. He's perfectly logical, or she is, excuse me, and it is a significant rider upgrade. I thought Eric gave this horse a great ride 2 races back, and she just hung on the money, which bothers me a little bit in there with a couple of seconds, but I'm not going to disagree that she rates to get a better trip. I like the 11 Autumn, who I think has just faced better horses. That first race, that was one that featured an accident, and this horse was trying to make a little bit of a move in there. It took a ton of money. Then last time out going 7, kind of got caught chasing a pretty reasonable pace. And if you look at the horses, the winner came back, improved 6 buyer points. The third horse, 5 buyer points. The fourth horse, 2 buyer points. The fifth horse, Photon, 4 buyer points. The seventh horse, plus 7 buyer points. So there's an argument that figure, and this horse was probably not in the most advantageous situation in there,
Right.
could have run more like a 70 or so, all these consider even higher. So I preferred Autumn in this race, stretching out. I'd like to see Tyler be aggressive. We'll see what a horse like the 9 Splashy does. Supposed to be forward here, and I'm not leaving out the 13 Overacting. I'm not leaving out a Klarovich, Chad Brown first-time star in this race. Just because I just feel like the ones that have run have kind of had their share of chances, and I want newish faces to the group, and for me, that's the 11 and 13.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think that Autumn was really against the flow of that race, too. I see what you're saying about how this was a horse that was really involved early in a pace that, kind of came back in the later stages. That was only her second start. And I think that just that mentality of having something go so wrong first time out, and you can say the same for Lady Lauban, a horse that ended up being banned off after that race, did come back. And while she didn't wow next time out necessarily, she broke a little bit slow, took a little bit to get her legs under her. And I think just both of them are capable improving now third time out after the trouble that they faced first time.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Van because she fell over another horse. She didn't actually get injured.
No, but she was ultimately,
I'm
she's okay,
I'm gonna
but-
read you some stats. Jorge Abreu stretching out in the turf is 2 for 42 with a 45-cent ROI. With Maiden stretching out in the turf, he's 0 for 19 with 0 hitting the board. So his first win stretching out of Maiden, it's on me, Jorge. That was a big problem for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll go over the second half of the card, the pick 6, after a quick break.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Racing fans, be sure to head to the Jockey Autograph Signing today from now until 12:30 p.m. located at the Jockey Silks Porch just inside Gate B. With suggested donations benefiting the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund, fans can get a Saratoga poster or other items signed by the Saratoga Jockey Colony. Also, be sure to head to the PDJF tent located inside Gate A near Horse Sense to pick up a pack of jockey trading cards with 100% of all donations from the trading cards benefiting the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund. Be sure to collect them all. And now we go back to Talking Horses with Andy Serling and Sarah L. Bodwin.
Thanks, Frank. And we do want to mention that get a chance to head over that and support a good cause in the PDJF. Thank you, Frank, for letting people know about that. Head on over. We'll even give you a little bit of a break if it causes you to miss a little Talking Horses. It's a good cause. That's what we do it for. Race number 7. This is the look of another one of those good Saratoga maiden races. They weren't that fast last week. We'll see how that one pans out. We'll see if these ones are a bit faster. We'll start with a horse that we both have on top, the 8 Lambo, a $950,000 two-year-old purchase after working 10 flat. And I think it's important that people see the start of this race because you can actually, it's horrible that they show only the head on of a start. To show races without a pan of the start is an enormous disservice to horse players all over the country. It's a disgrace, to be honest. But it's clear that in breaking out, that this horse broke probably 2 to 3 lengths behind the field. And I'd have to say that was probably the reason this horse lost at odds on. But now comes here and runs against a pretty salty-looking group of maidens. We've taken him, but I'm not convinced.
No, and of course in a race like this, while you do have a couple with some experience, the waters do only get deeper in a spot like this because you do have those flashy debuting kinds of pedigrees and connections as well. But this is a horse that this happens to 2-year-olds pretty frequently when they have that open space outside of them when they're breaking towards the outside. They'll gravitate towards it. We see it all the time. So no serious fault of his own, and now he's not going to be the outermost post in here. I think that he handled the race pretty well considering the trouble early on and had reasons to maybe continue acting a little green, but once he was on track, he ran a pretty good race for second.
Yeah, 5 of the 6 dirt races that day were won wire to wire, so he was badly compromised by the circumstances early, but there are firsters, including the overly touted Full to Mage, Dornoch. This feels to me like a horse I want no part of. You could use defensively, but as far as betting the race, this horse has been touted since we got to Saratoga, and this horse is 2-1 morning line. I'm going to let a horse like this. These international horses, they lose way more than they win.
And Mage is a horse that, while he was maybe a little sneakily talked about for his debut, he was a price. He was a price when he won first time out. So now really you're just taking this horse based on what we've seen from that Kentucky Derby winner. And of course, this horse has some decent works. There's the pedigree as well. But this is not a horse that you bet to win. This is not a horse that I would have any interest in placing dollars on to win the race.
When did the 10 scratch?
Earlier today.
Okay, I missed that. Okay. All right, I am third. I'm not surprised. The 11 horse who gets in should be talked about as well. Skip the Line.
Yeah.
It seems like a reasonable price for an Into Mischief Have to Arrogate that this horse only went for $450,000, given the kind of prices that people are paying for pedigrees and these connections paid for pedigrees. But I think it's important to note that this horse gets in.
Absolutely, and this is a horse that worked with some older company as well. He worked with 4-year-old St. Tappet for Todd Pletcher and seems to have held his own while doing so. So that's a big move up for a horse like this. Yeah. Definitely worth that mention. For me, we've talked about this a little bit. We talked about it yesterday. When you have those horses with those big pedigrees that sell for less than you expected, sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean anything about what we'll see from them out on the racetrack.
Well, of course not. I mean, the
Sometimes
best horse
does,
that those guys bought was Forte, and he cost $110,000. They spent $1 zillion, but I still think it's worth noting that I have to arrogate $450 given the prices that get paid. The three that you have in there, Catherine DeWise, she was a very nice sprinter that Chad Brown had, 5 of 8, ran 103 buyers, an unsound horse, kind of hard to keep on the track, but she was very talented.
Yeah, and this one has a work, too, that matches that horse that made her debut the other day, Mama Smitty, who was off a little bit slow and really improved to finish second in there. So this is one that I wanted to include in the mix somewhere, although he doesn't have the best stats with 2-year-old first-time starters.
I'm using Global Perspective, a horse that I could be a runner, a half to Rowayton. I'm going to use that horse as well for Chad Brown. This may be a rare Chad Brown sort of firster that gets lost a little bit because of how much is going on here, and we'll see if Dornoch can live up to his advanced billing. The first grade 1 on today's card, the only grade 1 in today's card only, is the Alfred Vanderbilt, a terrific race coming up. And we'll start with Elite Power, who I guess will be the favorite. He's got IRAD. He's the returning champion. He's a terrific horse that shows up every time. My problem with him is he's just not very fast, and I think that Gunite is a faster horse.
This is something that you've mentioned a little bit in kind of that comparison to Jackie's Warrior, where it's an incredible accomplishment to win stakes year after year in a row. But the numbers that he's running, when you think of horses that we've seen in the past and some of the real greats in the sprint division, this just doesn't compare in terms of the figures that we see from a horse like this. And while he is certainly good and currently the leader of this division, I do think that Gunite is a horse that is a little bit faster, and he's also one that has more of a tactical advantage on a horse like Elite Power. He's going to be a little bit more forwardly placed than he is, and that could also work in his benefit too.
I also thought when he lost to Elite Power, he was a little bit too forward in that race.
That was aggressive.
Now, listen, he obviously came back with aplomb from Maidan and running 2 races over in the Middle East, and we see this effort. The 108 buyer, I don't know. I kind of want to see it again. It feels closer to a 104 to me looking at the other horses. I mean, they have Bengo running a 105, and we'll roll that race, the Aristides from Churchill Downs. Bengo, he runs a 100 buyer. He runs a 105 buyer in this race. If we can show it. He ran a 99 in his next start. He's a bit of a Swiss watch horse. So this figure sticks out a little bit to me. But even if it's a 104, it's faster. And I'm a Gunite fan. I thought he ran terrific in the Alan Jerkins last year when he really fought Jack Christopher tooth and nail the wire. And I want to see Elite Power beat a horse. And I know he did it overseas, to be fair. But I want to see him beat him here in this race because I think that Gunite is going to turn out to be the better one as we progress through the year.
I think just the overall body of work when you go back and you look at some of Gunite's races, and you've seen a horse like this, he was good when he was 2. And he's gone on and maintained and improved off of that form as well. And we don't see that all the time where these horses stay at the top levels in sprint divisions throughout their career.
I'm going to argue there is no single trainer in the game that is better than Steve Asmussen at doing this. This is the thing. I mean, obviously he wins a lot of races. He doesn't need, huge introduction. But what he really does well is get these horses to improve and keep that form. I mean, obviously there aren't that many that can do it. But you think about the horses, the gun runners, in general, these horses, Gunite, so many others. Echo Zulu, the race she ran. By the way, yesterday's Amsterdam winner, not Steve Asmussen, a 110 buyer for that effort. But no, he won't be running in the Travers. A guy on Twitter thinks he would. I guess Gunite could get a piece here. if Gunnett
Certainly
beats
has
Gunnett,
improved.
Steve Asmussen would not be happy after this race,
No.
given the struggles he'd had with
Sorry,
this
Frank.
horse.
Good luck with those.
Yeah, that would be a little bit tough. And Dean Delivers in good form, but it does feel like the two big dogs are the two big
Right.
dogs.
Dean Delivers is a good horse. I don't want to completely dismiss his chances,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think that they would have to not run their absolute A race in order for him to beat them.
Both of them.
Both of them, right.
Yeah, and he's got to take that form up from Florida, which
Right,
sometimes
right.
is tricky
but
to
he's,
do.
I mean, if I was an owner, I'd be happy to have him in the barn. So.
Well, it's always true, but that's always the cop-out also. But, yeah, listen, he's terrific, but the other horses so far are better. But listen,
Yeah.
this is an important race, and I think we applaud them for taking a shot. Race number 9, we'll talk about in the turf, and I'll give a couple of dirt ideas. I do like a horse this race comes off, actually. Where'd you go here?
No Show Sammy Joe, which is another fun name to say, just like Gunnett and Gunnett. This is a horse that I liked a little bit on debut, and then I really felt as though next time out, this is a horse that did take a major step forward when breaking her maiden, and I feel as though that's a field where we've seen some okay horses come out of that race as well. Best Performer's not too terrible, although she's had a couple of chances. It wasn't exactly like a complete walkover field, improved from a 71 to a 77 buyer, and while this is a much tougher field, I felt as though a horse like Expand the Map, while she has been extremely unlucky in a couple of her races, she also does sort of have that propensity to finish second. She was going to be a short price, so while she's the horse to beat, I just wanted somebody else on top.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call her unlucky, and I do worry a bit about the second place finishes, though in general they are pretty good horses. So it's not like she's more been unlucky in the races that she was facing others, and she was probably going to win last time out. And there was an instant in that race and just completely ended her chances in there. It's good to see her back. Grand Motion's 12 for 85, 14% off of maiden wins and turf routes with a $1.09 ROI. And while I don't think that 14% is a bad number for a trainer to win off of maiden wins, it's very tough to go from a maiden win right into a non-winners of one and get it done. When I see 4-1 on this horse, I think it's a bad gamble. I don't think that Graham's bad at it, but I think the price, if this horse were 8-1, I wouldn't knock him. I didn't love the race he came out of, but we'll see how it works out. I do prefer Expand the Map, and I understand people have reservations. She's got 5 seconds and 8 starts. You know, she was highly touted, and she's really never put it together. But I do think she ran well in this race, and the winner of the race, a Grand Motion horse, I know they tried to stake after it. She ran super in here. Now, she was much the best. Expand the Map would have been lucky if she had beaten her.
Yeah, and if you go back a couple of races too, Expand the Map, once she was allowed to use some more speed and before really plays, that was a huge effort from her that day. So she's one that certainly extremely talented, but you look at the kinds of prices that she's been, it's a little bit of a disappointment, even though she has run so well based on those prices.
She's a gigantic disappointment. I mean, she was considered a Breeders' Cup Turf, really, a heavy favorite over Pizza Bianca, won the race, and she lost to her. I mean, it's not shameful losing to that horse, given that she did win the Breeders' Cup.
At that time, but yes,
she was, no, you're 100% right. She is massively disappointing. I mean, she's still a non-winners of one in the middle of her 4-year-old year. She's a massive disappointment. There's no question about it. Spongy. If Spongy runs her A race, she's going to win this race. Her A race is too good for these. This one behind your friend Runaway Rumor,
My best
and she's
friend.
good. I worry a little bit she might need a race, though, like she did last time, especially breaking from an outside post.
Yeah, I mean, her comeback race last year, a 73 buyer, one of the lower performances that we've seen from her in the past. And while she does kind of take a second to round into form, I also worry, I guess, a little bit about the quality of horses that she's been able to beat, because we know a horse like Master of the Tunes, while we both love her, she is not a winning type.
Well, she was lucky to beat her that day. Master of the Tunes was much the best.
Well,
but
we
this
can say
effort,
that about a lot of her races.
No. That wasn't Dylan's fault. She had a terrible post in that race, and she ran unbelievably well, and this horse had a complete lucky suck-up trip. She has run big races, though. If you go back to 21, she was very good at one time, and I think it just took her a little while to get going last year. I'm going to disagree and say she's a very good horse, and Bill, I looked at 5 to 9 month layoffs, essentially. He's got great numbers. I think the good Spongy is just better than these. We can agree to disagree, which is fine.
No, I do agree with that. I think it's just, are we going to see it today? Which I know you have that same concern.
So I know the two you got to have fun is an interesting horse in here, and I put her in there for 3 diamonds. You know, they paid a lot of money for a horse that's coming off 2 incredibly slow races at Mountaineer and Belterra, and other than being a friend of mine, Kirk Wyckoff's actually a reasonably intelligent guy. Sort of a half to editor-at-large who was a Peter Brandt runner that was pretty good. I think she broke her maiden year first time out, pandemic year, on the closing weekend. This is an interesting buy on this horse, and I think she's interesting going to the turf. She also could be forwarded here. She's a candidate to wire the field.
It's possible. Yeah, we'll see what happens with her today. I mean, this is one that maybe
He's just a new
being
face
that
in this
inside
race.
speed in a turf race, switching over for the first time. You know, Maker does that well, so I don't blame you for looking for a price.
So off the turf, Tough Streets obviously would be a gigantic favorite in here. I'm going to try to beat her with the 3, Mariah's Appeal. That was a very live race. If you looked that race up last time out at Fairgrounds, and I know it's been a while, but I think that's a very interesting horse. And I've never been Tough Street's biggest fan. She's run better than I've probably given her credit for in her races, and the outside draw helps her because she loves to do her running on the outside. And she has races where she ran well against rail biases with wide trips. But I'm going to try to beat her with Mariah's Appeal if the race comes off.
And Merlaz is a horse that was kind of thought to be the goods for Brad Cox as well at that time. So certainly one that, if this race does come off, I'd want to use too.
And I have to root for a horse named Absinthe, so I would use that one as well. Race number 10, the Jim Dandy, one of my early Jim Dandies. The first one I ever saw was when Force 10 won. I want to say Donald Pierce rode that horse from California in 1975. But a firm running down Sensitive Prince from hopelessly beat with 128 pounds was...
That's the favorite one?
That was, and there have been some great ones. There have really been some great ones with Louis Couture's battling in this race. I want to say with Will's Way, but that's the one that sticks out for me. And let's talk about the Belmont Stakes a little bit and show the last half of the race. I have a very different opinion than the vast majority of people. I don't think Forte ran badly in here. 12 furlongs, 10-month layoff, blah, blah, blah. Irad was trying to get him motivated here, and the field got away from him. But I also feel that there were a number of bad rides given in here by very good riders. I have no idea what Flavien Prat was in such a big hurry about. I thought Tapit Trice was in an incredible hurry in this race as well. And I think that Hit Show was in a ridiculous hurry from the start of the race, especially considering there was essentially a rabbit in the race for Brad Cox. So I was surprised he was so close. And for me, the one that I want out of that race is actually Hit Show, who I thought made the premature, just was prematurely involved in this race and still hung on at the end. And I know a lot of people say, oh, Forte was wide. I get it. It's Belmont. I don't give as much, to that. Maybe I'm wrong. I know Forte's everybody's darling, and many expect him to end up being the leader of the division. But I still want to see this guy run a better race than he ran the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at some point in his 3-year-old year, and as of yet, I don't think he has.
And I know there's so much talk about the equipment change with the blinkers, and I get it, but generally when Todd does resort to the blinkers, and while he has had some success with doing so...
It's a horrible move.
It's because something's not going right. And so with Forte, when you've seen him run his races recently, like the Belmont Stakes, like that Florida Derby, he looks like he's about to go. The rider is asking, it takes him some time because he's sort of backing off on the turn. And we're getting to the point in the 3-year-old season where we're heading into the summer. And if you have that situation where the horse isn't engaging and giving their all throughout the entire race, there will be better horses waiting to take advantage of a situation like that. And I think that's kind of what started to happen when Mage almost beat him in that Florida Derby and when he did get beat in the Belmont Stakes.
And I think Mage ran the better race that day because he got left and he made the premature move. And Irad gave a tremendous ride that day, sort of letting Mage go and then going around him. I thought that was brilliance by Irad, frankly. And Irad, to me, was the hero in that race. And listen, this was a tremendous 2-year-old. There's no doubt. And
he's still a good 3-year-old.
Oh, he's excellent. He's one of the best horses in the country. I mean, but there are a lot of good horses in this race. And listen, the Jim Dandy isn't a put up or shut up race because the big race is the Travers. I get all that. But they need him to run well. And I'm going to give some stats for those that think Todd Pletcher moves are good with blinkers on. Overall, first-time blinkers, non-first-time starters. He is 35 for 197 with 18% and a $1.19 ROI. On the dirt, he's 25 for 133, 19% and a $1.11 ROI. In stakes, graded or non-graded, overall, he's 2 for 33, 6% with a 50-cent ROI. In graded or non-graded stakes in the dirt, first-time blinkers, he's 1 for 23. That was Dr. Post. Now, 12 hit the board, but he's 1 for 23 with a 31-cent ROI. So people who think this is a positive move, they're the stats. I didn't make them. Sarah didn't make them. They're the stats.
We didn't
and
just
there's
make
been
stuff up.
so much talk about he's going to put blinkers on it, somehow going to make them faster. Okay, maybe it will, but are you
But do
really
you
going to
want-
bet him at a short price counting on that?
Exactly. Do you want him at 7-5 with the kinds of numbers like that, where he has shown this little bit of an issue on the turn, where he's backing off and then re-engaging? Now, let's say that fixes the problem. He still is a horse that's going to be coming from off the pace. This is still a good field, and this is only his second start back off of what was an extended layoff regardless.
And I'm going to tell you something else. As we show Saudi Crown's race, if this was a Thursday and they had all their names were A, B, C, D, E, and you blocked out that they ran big races and everything, wouldn't Saudi Crown, who's completely lucid here, coming off this humongous effort against Fort Bragg, who's a monster, I mean, wouldn't he be favored in here?
Is this not the horse to beat in this race?
I honestly think he is, Sarah. I really do.
Because he looked like he was going to be completely swallowed up on the turn by Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
It looked like Fort Bragg was going to run right on by, and they battled it out all the way to the wire, where I thought, because I had picked Fort Bragg that day, I thought that maybe it wasn't going to happen.
Totally agree.
And I don't think that it was Fort Bragg hanging or not being as good. They put so much separation on the rest of this field, and Saudi Crown was extremely game, set fast fractions early, and should be the one that is loose on that lead
the only
today.
way he's not loose today is if he has an issue coming out of the gate. I mean, he is way faster than these. And it's interesting. He's a late addition to the field, and I'm not sure he's not the horse to beat, which is very rare for a horse that enters late.
The second I saw that he was in this race, I was like, ooh, now this got so much more interesting.
I agree. And listen, I think that Brad is thinking, I can run here. If he can't get the distance, I
Cut
can
him
run
back.
in the Allen Jerkins. If he can, because this is a good horse. I mean, they
Yes.
put a lot of distance on some good. Harrisburg is a nice horse. Let's talk about Disarm, that a lot of people seem to like. And I get it. He improved. Sloppy track last time. Now, this race, this day at Ellis, this was not a speed track. This was not a day carrying speed. And I know he beat Verifying, who's okay. He came back, and I think he won the, I don't know, what did he win? The Indiana
Something
or
Derby?
one of those Midwest Derbies. Boy, I don't know, man. I think this horse is in a heap of trouble against this field.
We haven't seen him be the absolute best of the best to compete with the kinds of top 3-year-olds that we've seen so far. I know he ran 4th in the Kentucky Derby, and a lot of people will look at
Suck
that.
up 4th.
But were you wowed by his race in there? I wasn't.
It's a perfect trip horse last time out.
Right.
Listen, he's improving for Steve Asmussen, so maybe he keeps having a trajectory going forward. But I want to see it against some horses that are all pretty good in here. I mean, I have some criticism of Forte, but he's really good. I mean, it's not, and I don't think Disarm's going to beat a horse like that today. And even Angel Empire, my problem with Angel Empire is not like the ride he got last time out. Might be the worst ride Flavien Prat's given since he came to New York, in my opinion, because I think he's a great, great rider. I just wonder if he's kind of a pick-up-the-pieces type horse. You have him 5th, so you obviously agree.
Yeah, yeah. And especially if there's going to be that kind of price discrepancy between him and Disarm, I'd rather use Disarm instead.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't. Disarm wins. There's no ticket I wouldn't rip up. Race number 11, I know your top choice in this race was a scratch.
Well, wasn't likely. Well, no, sorry. That's the next race. My mistake. Go ahead.
I thought you liked Act of Congress.
I did. I was thinking about the next race where I picked an 82nd.
Okay.
But let's stick to what we're
talk
talking about now.
Sikkim.
I wish the last race was better because I don't really have an excuse for it. And I wish that we didn't go all the way to have a dirt race in between. But when you go back to those 2 turf races before that, 3 back and 4 back, this horse has had significant trouble in both of those races. That was a race where a lot of horses had a lot of trouble in that race getting out of the gate. And I've never seen anything like this where this horse was in the middle of a 5-horse sandwich that
He was
basically
very unlucky.
collided together. And I wish there was a little bit more recovery in some of them, or that the last 2 races were not so blah. But even the race 4 back, I'm just kidding, fleet-footed. Those are good horses.
had a
If
trip
we
in there as
see
well.
that kind of performance, I think this horse could be very dangerous.
I agree with you. The problem is his last race was awful.
Awful.
Absolutely
Awful.
her last
Really
race.
not good.
And she was coming off 10 days off a race before it, but now she's coming back in 21 days. So if you thought it was a timing thing, has she really had enough time to recover? I've got her in there. I totally get where you're coming from, but I'm wondering if it was a bad indication she's taken a backward step.
It's fair.
Busy Morning, the number 8, who I have 2nd, you have 3rd. She has that blowout win back in June of 22 at Belmont. Ray Abreu's layoff stats are not great, but he doesn't really have a huge sample size. I mean, I feel like if she's run some of her better races, she's kind of the worst to beat here, isn't she?
Yeah, and I mean, this is one we talk about that natural progression with aging. Now 3 to 4, another horse that could possibly take another step forward. And I think that just the company this one was keeping in the past, even running a good third in that New York Stallion Series stakes against pretty good horses in there. I feel as though this is one I'm always rooting for the Final Furlong group. They're extremely nice people. They do a good job. I want to see a start from this one beforehand, before taking this one up a little higher. I like 2 horses that ended up coming out of this race, but certainly a logical contender.
Yeah, I like the 7 Carry quite a bit, and I'm hoping this race is able to be run on the turf. This is actually her first time against New York breds, which is kind of interesting. But besides that, look at who she ran against. Love Reigns last year. She beat Half a Chance, who's not that bad, in her turf debut. They tried her at a mile for her first race for the New Connections off a 3-month layoff in a race that completely and totally incinerated. And now she comes back in just a much more realistic spot. I really like Carey if this race is on the turf. And I don't disagree with you that Snowy Evening's a player here, though I hope she runs well for my friend Steve Christ and Ken Durrett.
Yeah, just another one facing good horses in the past as well.
Is 5.5 a little short, though?
Yeah, I worry about that a bit with this horse. I liked the company this one was keeping, but I do agree with you that this distance may not be her best.
She was also eliminated after the start last time out and lost all chance. The problem is she also lost to a horse that didn't get out of the gate and broke 4 lengths behind the field, which I didn't like. I think the race was sort of falling apart for the lesser positions there, but she did get badly steadied coming out of the gate. If this race is on the dirt, I'm going to tell you something. I hope they leave Sikkim in if the race is on the dirt, because this horse has dirt races that give her a real chance, and she should get some pace. Sandy's Garden looks very dangerous. She could bring that form from out of town to me. And I know a lot of people are going to like the 13 I'm Nervous Now because of that big win, the slop 3 back, and it'll be sloppy again. I'm a little dubious of that performance. I would be 10, 12, 14, 7 if all these horses stay in off the turf.
All right.
Race number 12, I really hope that we get to run this race because I like a horse quite a bit in this race. Now, She's Mo Bubbly is going to be tough. No argument. We'll show her running second, Libretto running third in the last race. I don't feel like you like this horse. Is this a horse you left out or something?
Yeah, I was going for a horse that was on the also eligible list in case there was a scratch. Didn't end up working out that way. But I'm not overly against this horse. I just felt as though this is one that was going to take a significant amount of money. You have that Ira Ortiz Jr. factor. And I liked the other Pletcher a little bit more, as I know you did as well.
Yeah, I like Fizzy, and we'll get to that. But I think Mo Bubbly ran terrific last time, and the extra furlong should only help her. And she lost a horse that came back to win her next
Highland
start, where
race
she
is
was
pretty
the only
good.
horse that closed into a race that pace held together. I don't have a problem in here. I mean, I actually in some ways think, though, that on the turf, the number 3, Toweret, is the horse to beat. I know that she finished behind Libretto last time, but Libretto was a lot more forward in there. And Toweret just never got to get into a good spot, was wide the whole way. And I think Toweret's run okay in her races. And I actually think in a slow-paced race last time, she ran the best race. And of the ones with form, I thought she was the one I prefer.
And I like that gradual stretch out in distance as well. They've been able to give her a little bit more ground to work with over time, and I don't think this mile and 3/8 will be a problem for her because I think that she has improved as the distances get a little bit longer too. There isn't really much pedigree to go on for this horse, but I do like this one in this kind of spot because I think that she ran a slightly better race than some of the shorter prices.
Well, why do we care about pedigree? She's run 3 times in the turf. I mean, I
don't know. I always look at it for these really longer, like turf
right, but she's run a
marathons.
mile and a quarter.
Yeah,
she's
she's
run
been capable
longer
of handling
distances,
it.
so I don't know why it's relevant. You have Callie's Grit on top.
This is one that I just feel as though is a little bit more proven. I know that the seconds are piling up, and we don't love to see that. And even the race where this was rained off the turf wasn't too badly. So if we do get some of that rain later, I would still leave this one as a major contender. And just a horse like Salabaya that beat her last time, just much, much better than what I think that she's facing overall today.
Yeah, I worry a little about the distance with this one, to be honest with you. This one is unproven. Probably has a shorter price if the race comes off the turf. As far as the number 9 Fizzy, I recommend people watch Fizzy's race last time because she broke a little bit slowly. I mean, she saved ground the turn. She didn't have a big problem in that position, but she just got sort of shuffled out of the race. And Irad realized he's in a position, the stretch where he just had no chance. And she gets completely shuffled back to last. And then she comes running again, and the race is ending, but she really started running. She galloped out way past the field. Now, I think some will look, and maybe they're right, and say, well, Ira Ortiz rode both of these Pletcher horses, and yet he chooses She's Mo Bubbly. Now, you just don't know the stories behind them. And I'm just going to go by what I saw in the races. And what I saw is a horse that's supposed to be better going longer, that was really running at the end. And I thought she was a super, super interesting horse in this race. And I'd love to be able to bet her in here on the grass.
Yeah, no, I like this one a lot. Picked second. I agree with all that you're saying. And I think just able to have a more favorable race flow this time out in her second start, certainly a player.
I picked the number 10, Sri Lanka, on top. I picked the race 10, 7, 13, 5 if it comes off the turf. I imagine the 10 will stay in. I've got a mile and a quarter because I look at Duke Girls, and isn't Duke Girls just going to be favored here off the turf just because?
Yep.
And that was a 5-horse field last time. I don't have any feeling that horse ran particularly well, and I don't want to just jump on this horse if this race comes off the grass.
Yeah, there needs to be something more when I look at these main track onlys to actually entice me to think that they're going to be so much better at what's going to be an extremely short price. So I hear you.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Sarah, thank you so much. Today's 12-race card. We begin the race fast and firm, keeping our fingers crossed it remains that way. It is Saratoga, so anything can happen, good or bad. Days where it pours when there's no rain predicted, so you never really know around here. Head over to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member of NYRA Bets, no better time than the present. Use the promo code SPA200 will match with $200 of your initial deposit. We've got a middle pick 4. I think it was race 6. So we decided race 6, 2, 4, and 2, 6, and whatever 8 or 10, 9. We've got 3 pick 5s as well. What else do we have, guys? Besides music in our ears, we have the $1 million bonus. If you play the late pick 5, play it through NYRA Bets. It's an unlikely event, but regardless, it's not a bad thing not to do it. That's for sure. You'd hate to miss out on $1 million. NYRABets.com/million for more information. Also, Taste New York Pavilion, head on over. Gate A. By the way, head over to the PDJF by the Silks Room if you want to get some jockey autographs and support a very worthwhile cause in the PDJF. We have some show graphics for you. We're on 12:30 to 1:30 on FS2, 1:30 to 3 on FS1, 6 to 7 on FS2, and 3 to 6 on Big Fox, as we will be on 6 Saturdays, this being the second of them, through the Travers. Enjoy what figures to be a really fun day here at Saratoga, as July is coming to an end, and the next 4 Saturdays will all be in August here at Saratoga. Frank Miramati up next to reprise the scratches and changes.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we ask that you please rise and remove your hats as we welcome Journey Ray Bevers of Summit, New York, performing our national anthem.